Velkommen til Krimfestivalen. Det finns knapt adjektiv som dekker hvor stor Harlan Coben i spenningsverden. En ting at den en bestselgende forfatter av nå til sammen 31 romaner. Men det viktigste at han vår tids største på å bygge plott, skape overraskelser, skremme og glede leseren samtidig som han alltid har en god dose humor med seg. Tenk bare på den lange serien med detektiven Myron Bollitar, frittstående romaner som Tell No One og Gone for Good, kjent på norsk som Borte for alltid og Ikke et ord. Og etter hvert også en jevn strøm av serier på Netflix og andre strømmetjenester. Nå aktuell med The Boy from the Woods, gutten fra skogen, på norsk, som jeg har her, som skal være ute nå. Og det en ære å ønske spenningsmesteren Harlan Coben velkommen. So, Mr. Coben, it is an honor to finally be able to say welcome to the Crime Festival in Norway.
Thanks. I really wish I was there in person, but it's great to be here any way we can.
Yeah. Excellent. So we're just going to dive right into this book. This is the Norwegian edition of The Boy from the Woods, gutten fra skogen. I mean, like, we meet familiar characters in this new novel. Hester Krimstein or Krimstein? Krimstein. But there's also this boy from the woods. Who is he?
Well, I came up with the idea. I was taking a hike through the woods here in New Jersey, and I don't like hiking. I find hiking boring in the woods. It's a tree, then it's another tree, and then it's another tree. I prefer walking in the city where I can see people and coffee shops and bookstores and things like that. But as I was walking and getting bored and distracted, I noticed a little boy, maybe 5 or 6 years old, wandering by himself. I started to think, what if this boy came out of the woods and swore he's always lived there? He has no memory of parents. He broke into cabins to feed himself or lived off the land, but had zero memory of any parents and believes he's lived there. And maybe he has his entire life, almost like a Tarzan or Mowgli figure. And then what if 30 years pass and he still doesn't know how he ended up in that woods, and now another teen goes missing? And that's the start of The Boy from the Woods, the seed that I came up with that became the book.
Is that how you usually get ideas for your books, like from things happening like that, or do you sometimes get it from like news sources or more specific things?
Literally everything. The story I just told is not uncommon, but it's really turning on something in my brain that is always asking, what if? So even if I read a news story, if I'm walking around, if I'm doing whatever, I'm always asking, what if? What can I make this different? How can I make this sort of interesting? I'll just give one more quick example. I wrote a book a number of years ago called Promise Me. And that idea came when when I overheard some teenagers talking about drinking and driving. And I pulled them aside and I said, promise me, title of the book, you won't ever drink or drive. Call me. I don't care if it's 3 a.m. I don't care what you're smoking or doing. I'll come pick you up, but just don't get in a car with someone who's been drinking and driving. Now, in real life, that's the end of the story. Nothing else ever happened. But fiction writing is asking, what if? Well, what if a teenage girl calls my hero? What if he goes to New York City and picks her up and she's drunk and stoned? And what if he drops her off at a house and the next day she's gone and no one in the house even knows who she is? That's the start of a book. So I think the part of you that has to keep opening up that what if is really the key.
But one thing I found fascinating with this Wild, which is called the Boy from the Woods, is that even though he's kind of like a Mowgli, Tarzan character, as you said, but he's also, like when we meet him, he's quite tech savvy. Yeah. He has because in literature it's, I mean, like, I would expect him to be like this, just like strange character living in the woods, hating technology and not being connected to anything. But he makes use of all this technology. How did you develop him as a character like that, and why was that important?
It's thinking what he would be. I mean, first of all, he got out of the woods when he was 5 or 6. They don't really know his age, do they? Because they don't know when he was born. So he comes out of the woods when he's 5 or 6. How many memories before the age of 5 or 6 do you have? And yet it's also what probably formed you. So he gets out of the woods, then he's an intelligent guy. He's raised by a regular family. He goes to high school, he goes to schools, joins the military. So he has a full life outside of this. But what would you be like if the first 6 years of your life, you were, as far as you know, completely on your own in these woods? There would be a draw, and there'd be probably something that would make you fear it, but also understand it in a way that others couldn't. So it's just sitting around trying to come up with what I thought this character would be like based on his background and based on the strengths and weaknesses he has. I could have easily have gone the other way. That's the interesting thing, of course, just like a human being, nature, nurture, and all of that. It could have been that this made him exactly like a Mowgli who just wants to go to the woods and still speaks in broken English or whatever else. But that didn't really seem likely in the modern era.
There's another character called Rusty Eggers, who when we meet him, he's a presidential candidate. He's coming from the world of television. And in the beginning, my first thought was, obviously, this is Donald Trump, until you, as a writer, tells us that it is not Donald Trump. Who is he, and where did he come from, and how did you develop him?
Well, no, he's come from a poor family. He's super smart. There's a lot of things about him. He's not right-wing necessarily. So I did not want the confusion of people thinking, oh, this is Trump, and immediately having a visceral reaction to him one way or the other. This is fiction. I am talking about extremes, and there is some political stuff in that way in it. But everything is always slave to the story with me. This book takes place in the current day, other than it's not the COVID world. It's right before COVID. And so I write modern novels, and I have to kind of reflect what's going on in the modern world. So right now we're having all sorts of things with fake news, media manipulation, extremism, gaslighting, both, whatever side you're on, all of those things exist, like it or not. And so my job as a writer is to say, wow, what can I do with that? How can I put that into a cool kind of crime story? And so that's what I did.
But I also got the feeling when I read The Boy from the Woods that, and I saw that some other reviewers also commented on that there's a little bit more anger in this book than in previous Harlan Coben books. Did you experience that yourself when you were writing it?
Yeah, I think it's an angry time. I mean, I think it's especially, hopefully it's going to get better now, but it's an angry time in America. It's been a rude awakening the last few years. I mean, one of the jokes I've been telling is that I work much too hard on my villains. I have to give my villains reasons for doing things and not being just evil. And in reality, a lot of them just seem to be evil with no reason. So it's been an angering time. It's been a frustrating time. At the same time, my job is to give you a sense of escape and a sense of fun and a sense of adventure. It's I hope, a really cool mystery. I think it's a chicken and egg question about themes and politics and social novel aspect of any crime novel. Those are always in the background for me, but they are slave to the story. So in other words, if I'm writing the story and I may have a pithy, wonderful observation on the world that I want to share with you, if it's not fitting in the story, it's got to go. My job is to keep you up at night turning pages. My job is for you to take this book on vacation and not want to leave your hotel room because you're so into what happened to Wilde and Hester and Naomi and Ava and all the rest of the characters that are in this story. So the social novel aspect that I do of what I do, or the themes of those sort of political themes, are, I hope, a bit more subtle, or at least more in the actual story. Nothing is interrupted from the story just to have a political moment.
Another thing, the social media has been an important, but I think not dominating factor in your books. And I wanted to ask you this question. As a writer of traditional suspense novels. How do you combine? How do you work with combining modern stuff like social media, encrypted messaging apps like Signal and stuff like that, and write them into the story without making it a tech novel?
Because it's not a tech. I mean, this is just the world we live in, right? I mean, years ago, they used to have those old movies. You probably sometimes, when you're flipping around, you still see them. And there's always that scene when the person's desperately calling the person home and you watch the phone ring and you hear the pick up, oh, please pick up. Well, you can't do that anymore. That's not realistic. There's no one, everyone has a cell phone, right? Everyone's got one of these things. So that just has to go. That presents new challenges and old ones. In the early 90s, when I was first writing my Myron and Wynne books, I had this super clever idea where when Myron was in trouble, he would call Wynne on a cell phone and Wynne can listen in on him. People thought this was cutting edge technology. Now, of course, it's a snapshot of 1994 or whatever the year was that I had that in the book. So I'm just reflecting the reality. If somebody that's watching this is going on a date tonight with someone they don't know, they're Googling that person's name. That's not cutting edge technology. That's what we live with. We live with Twitter. We live with Facebook. We live with Instagram. That's, at least in America, we do, or the life that I am familiar with. It's part of people's daily lives. To pretend it doesn't exist is to have that kind of weird Luddite wouldn't really work. Now, I've had Luddite characters, and I'll continue to, but the books take place in the current environment. Aside from trying to avoid the COVID stuff, I'm trying to avoid that. So I have to reflect that. And people go on social media. People get their news from Twitter. People do whatever it is that we are doing in modern society. But I don't do a lot of research. I don't know how tech works. I don't get how Signal manages to make your calls anonymous or whatever else. But it exists. And if I want to make a call that no one is going to be able to trace as easily, I'll use Signal.
Another thing, your plots are often built around missing children or children that has disappeared and in this book there are several of them. Is disappearing children like the biggest plot starter, the ultimate fear?
No, I think I've written probably 32 novels, and my guess is that a missing child is maybe involved in 5 of them.
Okay.
I'm big on missing people in general. I don't write, it's just like asking Agatha Christie in a sense, a lot of people get murdered in your books. Yeah, they're murder books. I write missing people books for the most part. Not every one, but of the 32 or so, I'd say 28 of them involve a disappearance. I like disappearances. That's my thing. I find them compelling. If you don't like disappearances and twists around them, I'm probably not your guy. But the reason I like them is that when you have someone disappear, there's hope. So if somebody's murdered and dead, you can solve a crime, you can have justice, you can have redemption, but that hope is gone. That person's not, unless you're writing a zombie story, it's not coming back from the dead. When someone's missing, there's hope. And so that adds an element that's compelling to me. You can be actually made whole. You can find justice and redemption and mystery, all those other things, but there's a chance the person is still fine and alive, and it deepens the mystery. So most of my books will feature disappearances because that's what I find particularly interesting to write about.
You mentioned Agatha Christie, but which author have inspired you to write? As you said, about missing people, and any particularly important writers for you?
Well, inspire is a good word because there's a difference in influencing and inspiring. Anything great inspires me. And I think one of the things that writers sort of need to understand or should understand is that it doesn't have to necessarily be writers that inspire you. Though, I owe a debt of gratitude to Raymond Chandler and Robert B. Parker and, all those guys and women who came before me, Sue Grafton. There's a lot. I could sit here, Mary Higgins Clark for suspense, and Philip Roth was a major influence on me, even though maybe you don't see it quite as clearly, both being from the same area and similar backgrounds, though a generation or two or a generation and a half apart. But I also say that an Edward Hopper painting inspires me. An Alfred Hitchcock film can inspire you. A Bruce Springsteen song can inspire me. Anything great inspires me to try to be better, for one thing. But you can find storytelling in all of those. A Hopper painting. You look at a Hopper painting. If you can't think of a story, you're not really looking closely. If you listen to most of Bruce Springsteen's songs, they're short stories. They're brilliant short stories when he's at his best. And so, keep your eyes open. Anything can lead to inspire you and to influence you to writing more and better.
Let's talk a little bit about your TV series. For a long time, the only film or series made from your books was the French adaptation of Tell No One, which I personally found was a great movie. But now there are several French series. There's at least one Polish series, and you have Safe and The Stranger on Netflix. What happened with the adaptation of Harlan Coben career?
Part of it is luck, both bad and good. For a long time, the luck was not good with adaptations. It's as simple as that. I was always having books optioned. That's the word they use in Hollywood, where it would get close to being made and something would go wrong and an actor would get sick or somebody would back out. That's the story you'll hear from every writer you probably ever interviewed. Always has we all have our awful stories about Hollywood. I got very lucky early on that a young French director, he was young at the time, Guillaume's not so young anymore, but Guillaume Canet wanted to make Tell No One. And even though Hollywood had purchased it, and everybody told me I was crazy, I was able to get the rights back at some point, and I just believed in Guillaume and what he wanted to do. And I think we made a movie that's I'm very proud of, and I know he is too, called Tell No One, which we can still find and watch today. And the other problem was, number one, I'd been given really good advice when I first started out, and that is that a lot of novelists get lost in Hollywood. I mean, Hollywood beat the hell out of Faulkner and Hemingway and Fitzgerald. Would crush the soul of me. So I wisely, I think, stayed away from Hollywood for a very long time, where I would let them option it. They would either turn it into something I didn't like, or they wouldn't make it. So it wasn't much of a concern. But now I've written, over 30 novels. I'm at a different stage of my career, and TV is different. So when I was looking at doing TV early on, we had 3 or 4 networks, and CBS wanted 22 episodes, and it would be like CSI, where in 47 minutes you solve a crime, blah, blah, blah. But Netflix and streaming services like that, and some of the European places I've worked, said, no, you can make it a 6-episode series of one story, 8 episodes, 10 episodes, whatever you want. And I found some good people to work with and started to do that. And I really enjoyed the process. So I signed a deal with Netflix where we're making a number of series. Right now on Netflix, I think in your country, you have Safe, The Stranger, and The Woods, 2 in English and 1 film in Polish. And this year you'll have The Innocent, based off my novel, which is Netflix Spain, Gone for Good, which is Netflix France. And I just started with the same team that made Safe and The Stranger. We're starting to film, I think next week, Stay Close. So I hope to continue to do that. I love telling stories, and I've loved finding new ways. And it's been fun. Being a writer is an introvert by nature. By nature, most of the time, I'm here by myself writing. I've done that for a long time, since 1990, my first novel came out. So I've been doing that for over 30 years. So it's been nice to get out and to collaborate with other people. But this is the fun flip side, is after I'm out for a little while, I'm an introvert. So I start to lose my mind and I say, oh my God, I got to get alone to a room. And I come back here and I write the novels. So one hasn't really taken the place of the other. One hasn't really hurt the other. They usually help me to produce or write more in both categories by being that kind of different sport, if you will. I compare one, when I'm doing the TV series, it's like I'm captain of a World Cup soccer team. I want my teammates to do well. I don't care who scores. We just got to win and get there, and we're going to celebrate as a team. When I write the novels, I'm like a tennis player or a golfer. I'm all by myself, alone on that stage, doing it all. Both have their joys.
One final question. Wilde, who is The Boy from the Woods kind of, for some reason, reminds me of Carl Hiaasen's maybe greatest recurrent character, Skint. Is there any chance that Wilde might come back in the Harlan Coben novels, like Skint has become a recurrent character with Carl Hiaasen?
Well, as you know, Hester Crimstein, the other character in the book, is a recurring character. I've had her in a number of books over the years and decided it was time to tell her whole story rather than just having her be the funny lawyer sidekick kind of thing. So with Hester, but yes, I'm writing right now a sequel to The Boy from the Woods that will give you more of his origin story. It opens up with him finding his father. That's how the book opens. So he's back. I mean, it's the second. I don't think it's necessarily going to be a longer series. I don't know how many more books, but Wilde and Hester are back with another case, and mostly this case is to find out how Wilde ended up in the woods in the first place. So yeah, he's back.
Excellent. Great news. Thank you so much for your time, Harlan Coben. And of course, there are lots of woods and suburbs here in Norway as well. So if you ever want to come visit us at the Crime Festival in Oslo, you're always very welcome.
Believe me, I would love to, man. I haven't been in Oslo in years, and I would love to be back, and I'd love to hang with the Norwegian readers. So thank you guys very, very much for reading me, and I really do hope to see you guys soon.
Excellent, thank you. And to our Norwegian viewers, husk å fortsette å se andre ting på Krimfestivalen. Det masse bra innhold her utover i festivalen på krimfestivalen.no og litt rundt om på YouTube og forskjellig. Så følg med.